Growing up in a small Midwest town, I believed family meant unconditional love. After landing my software engineering job in California, I faithfully sent money home every month, supporting my struggling family from afar. The ritual became my way of maintaining connection despite the distance. But last Christmas, when financial hardship forced me to temporarily stop my payments, their true feelings surfaced. My calls went unanswered. My texts ignored. "We don't need you anymore," they finally said. Before I share what happened next, tell me where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family betrayal resonates with you. I grew up in a quaint little town called Mapleton, in the heart of the Midwest. The kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do, and the tallest building is the grain silo at the edge of town. My family was not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but we got by. My father, Mike, worked at the local manufacturing plant, making automotive parts, putting in 60-hour weeks to keep food on the table. Mom, Laura, worked part-time as an accountant for a few small businesses in town. Then there was my younger sister, Jessica, 3 years my junior, and always the apple of our parents' eyes. Despite our financial limitations, my childhood memories are filled with warmth. Saturday morning pancakes, fishing trips to Lake Henderson with Dad, and family game nights where Mom would always let Jessica win at Monopoly. The constant refrain in our household was, "Family is everything. When the world turns its back on you, family will always be there." How painfully ironic those words would become. School came naturally to me. While other kids struggled with math equations and science projects, I found myself solving them with ease. By my junior year of high school, my guidance counselor, Mrs. Franklin, started talking about scholarships and colleges far beyond our state lines. When I received a full academic scholarship to a prestigious technology university in California, my parents displayed my acceptance letter on the refrigerator like a trophy. "You're going to be the one who makes it big," Dad said, his eyes shining with pride. The first Watson to leave Mapleton for something greater. Leaving home was harder than I had anticipated. The night before my departure, Mom made my favorite meal, meatloaf with garlic mashed potatoes, and everyone was uncharacteristically quiet at dinner. Jessica, usually full of sarcastic remarks, simply asked if she could have my room when I was gone. Dad gave me his old wristwatch, the only thing of value he owned, and told me to remember where I came from. The 6-hour flight to California felt like entering another universe. Palm trees instead of cornfields, mountains instead of flat horizons, and people who moved with purpose and urgency, unlike the relaxed pace of Mapleton. My first year at university was a blur of challenging classes, late-night study sessions, and weekend jobs at the campus coffee shop to cover expenses not included in my scholarship. Despite the distance, I called home twice a week without fail, eager to share my new experiences and hear familiar voices. Technology had always fascinated me, but the innovation happening in California was beyond anything I had imagined. I soaked up knowledge like a sponge. Coding languages, software development, artificial intelligence. Professors took notice of my dedication, and by junior year, I was already interning at a promising startup. After graduation with a perfect GPA and glowing recommendations, I received multiple job offers and accepted a position as a software engineer at TechFront, one of the largest tech companies in San Francisco. The day I received my first paycheck was surreal. The amount displayed on my bank statement was more than my parents made in 3 months combined. I wanted to share this success to show them that their sacrifices had been worthwhile. But before I could even call with my news, my phone rang with an unfamiliar urgency. Dale, honey, Mom's voice trembled on the other end of the line. "I hate to do this, but we're in trouble." The manufacturing plant where Dad had worked for 23 years was closing its doors, moving operations overseas where labor was cheaper. 250 workers, many who had dedicated their entire working lives to the company, were left without jobs or pensions. The severance package was insulting. 2 weeks' pay for each year of service. For a man who had given them over 2 decades, it was nowhere near enough. "We're behind on the mortgage." Mom continued, her voice dropping to a whisper as though Dad might overhear from the next room. "And Jessica has been having these terrible migraines. The doctor wants to run tests, expensive ones, not covered by our insurance." I did not hesitate. "How much do you need?" That evening I sent them $3,000, a significant portion of my first professional paycheck. The relief in Mom's voice when I called to confirm the transfer was palpable. "You're saving us, Dale. Your father is too proud to say it, but you're saving this family." What began as a one-time emergency assistance quickly evolved into a monthly arrangement. Each month I would transfer money home initially, $1,500, then $2,000, as my salary increased with promotions. The ritual became as automatic as paying my own rent or utilities. Mom would call a few days after receiving the money, thanking me profusely and providing updates on how it was being spent. Mortgage payments, Jessica's medical bills, groceries, utilities. "It's just until your father finds another job," she assured me repeatedly. Just to help us get back on our feet, I reorganized my personal budget, cutting back on outings with friends and delaying purchases I had dreamed of making. Instead of the downtown apartment I had my eye on, I rented a modest studio in a less desirable neighborhood. The sacrifices seemed worthwhile. I was fulfilling my duty as a son, supporting the people who had supported me. Over the next few months, the tone of our conversations shifted subtly. Our video calls, once filled with stories and laughter, became increasingly focused on financial matters. When would I send the next transfer? Could I possibly increase the amount? Jessica needed a new laptop for college. The roof needed repairs before winter. Dad was considering enrolling in a training program that might improve his job prospects. "We miss you so much," Dale, Mom would say, her face filling my computer screen. "We wish you could visit more often." Yet whenever I suggested flying home for a weekend, there always seemed to be a reason why it wasn't a good time. Dad was grouchy from job hunting. Jessica was stressed with exams. The house was being renovated. I began to notice that the family rarely reached out between money transfers. But the day after each deposit cleared, my phone would light up with messages expressing gratitude and love. I brushed aside the uncomfortable pattern, telling myself, families get busy and at least the financial support was keeping us connected. The requests grew more frequent and more substantial. An unexpected car repair. Property taxes higher than anticipated. A special opportunity for Jessica to attend a summer program at an exclusive arts camp. Each time I transferred the funds without question, believing in the temporary nature of their need and the permanence of our bond. Looking back, I can see the red flags clearly. But at the time, I was too close to the situation, too emotionally invested to recognize what was happening. I had become not a son, but an ATM, with a pulse valued not for who I was, but for what I could provide. After approximately 2 years of sending money home, I began noticing troubling changes in my family's behavior and lifestyle. Dad finally secured employment at a distribution center, making less than his previous job, but enough to keep the household running. Mom, however, quietly stopped mentioning her accounting work altogether. When I asked directly, she vaguely referenced health concerns that made working difficult, though she never specified what these concerns were. Jessica graduated from the state university with a degree in communications, but showed little interest in finding employment. "The job market is terrible," she would explain during our increasingly brief video calls. "Besides, I'm focused on building my social media presence right now." Despite their continued claims of financial struggle, evidence of lifestyle upgrades began appearing in the background of our video chats and on their social media pages. A large flat-screen television I didn't recognize. Mom sporting a designer handbag I knew retailed for over $800. Dad mentioning weekend fishing trips to a lakeside cabin with his buddies. Most startling was when Jessica posted pictures of her brand-new Mazda crossover SUV complete with custom rims and a premium sound system, a purchase no one had mentioned to me. When I gently inquired about these acquisitions, the responses were always defensive. "We found it on clearance. It was a gift from your aunt. Jessica got a great financing deal." The explanations never quite added up, but confronting them directly seemed too accusatory, too much like keeping score. My growing unease found validation through conversations with others in my life. My closest friend in San Francisco, Aaron, came from a similar Midwest background, but maintained a very different financial relationship with his family. Over beers one evening, I described my monthly transfers and the subsequent interactions. Aaron set his glass down with concern etched on his face. That doesn't sound right, Dale. My parents would rather eat ramen for a month than ask me for money. And when I do help out, like when Dad's truck needed a new transmission, they insisted on treating it as a loan with a payment plan. At work, my mentor Thomas noticed my habit of bringing packed lunches and declining team outings toward the end of each month. When I eventually explained my financial obligations, his brow furrowed. There's a difference between supporting family and enabling dependency, he said carefully. Healthy boundaries with money are important in any relationship, even with parents and siblings. Perhaps the most eye-opening perspective came from my girlfriend Sophia, who I had been dating for about 6 months. After witnessing a tense phone call with my mother about an emergency dental procedure Jessica needed, she asked to speak candidly. "Dale, I need to tell you something that might be hard to hear," she began, her warm brown eyes filled with concern. "The way your family talks to you changes completely when money is involved. Have you noticed how they only call with real enthusiasm when they need something, or how your mom suddenly becomes distant if you mention any financial strain of your own?" I tried to defend them, explaining our family history, the economic challenges of our hometown, the values I was raised with. But Sophia's observations had cracked open a door I couldn't fully close again. I began paying closer attention to the patterns in our communication. The change was undeniable. Video calls that once lasted an hour or more had dwindled to 15 minutes of superficial updates. Text conversations consisted primarily of requests or acknowledgments of transfers. When I shared news about a significant project I had completed at work, earning recognition from company leadership, my family offered perfunctory congratulations before quickly steering the conversation toward their needs. My birthday passed with only a hastily composed group text. Thanksgiving came and went with promises that next year we would all be together. Christmas gifts I sent home received brief thank yous, while my packages remained without reciprocation. Each slight hurt more than the last, but I continued to tell myself that financial support was my way of staying connected, of proving my love despite the distance. The undeniable signs of financial manipulation became impossible to ignore when I discovered through an offhand comment from Dad that Jessica had taken a 2-week vacation to Hawaii with friends, a trip that coincided exactly with an offhand comment from Dad. Emergency appendectomy that I had sent $3,000 to cover. No medical procedure had occurred. No apologies were offered when I confronted them about the deception. "We thought you wouldn't understand," Mom said defensively. "Jessica worked so hard on her social media career. She needed the break for her mental health." My disillusionment grew alongside mounting pressure in my own professional and financial life. TechFront, once a darling of the tech industry, began experiencing significant setbacks. A major product launch failed, stock prices tumbled, and suddenly the company announced cost-cutting measures. Annual bonuses were canceled, salaries frozen, and rumors of layoffs spread through the office like wildfire. Simultaneously, the cost of living in the Bay Area reached new heights. My landlord raised my rent by 20%. Inflation drove up the price of everything from groceries to gas. The financial cushion I had carefully maintained began to thin dangerously. The stress manifested physically. Insomnia kept me staring at the ceiling until 3 in the morning. Anxiety tightened my chest during meetings, and frequent headaches became my constant companion. Sophia urged me to see a doctor, who diagnosed me with anxiety and recommended therapy alongside lifestyle changes. "Your current situation isn't sustainable," Dr. Patel told me bluntly. "Something has to give before your health deteriorates further." I knew she was right. Caught between dwindling resources and unrelenting family expectations, I faced the painful recognition that continuing as we had been was impossible. After 3 sleepless nights weighing my options and rehearsing what to say, I scheduled a video call with my parents and Jessica. The conversation I had been dreading could no longer be postponed. I remember every excruciating detail of that video call. I had prepared notes, practiced my delivery, even role-played potential reactions with Sophia. None of it adequately prepared me for reality. The screen lit up with their faces. Dad in his recliner, Mom perched on the armrest beside him. Jessica sprawled on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, even as the call began. I noticed Dad was wearing a new golf shirt with the logo of an exclusive country club nearby, another expense never mentioned. I need to talk to you all about something important. I began, my mouth dry despite the water glass at my side. There have been some changes at work and financially. Things are tight right now. I explained the situation at TechFront, the increased cost of living, and my mounting anxiety. As the words tumbled out, I watched their expressions shift from mild interest to sharp concern. So what I'm saying is, I finally reached my rehearsed conclusion. I need to temporarily pause the monthly transfers, just until things stabilize at work, or I find a better position. Maybe 3 or 4 months at most. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's face hardened into stone. Mom's eyes widened in disbelief. Jessica finally looked up from her phone, her expression a mixture of shock and indignation. "You cannot be serious," Dad finally said, his voice unnervingly quiet. "After everything we've done for you, we're counting on that money." Dale, Mom jumped in, her voice rising an octave. "We have commitments plans made based on your support." "What about my car payment?" Jessica interjected. "And I've put a deposit down on a photography workshop in New York next month." I tried to explain again, emphasizing the temporary nature of the pause offering to help them create a budget that wouldn't include my contributions. But they weren't listening. The conversation devolved rapidly, with all three talking over each other and over me. "How could you be so selfish? After all we sacrificed to raise you. I thought family meant something to you." Dad eventually delivered the ultimatum that would echo in my mind for months to come. "Figure it out, Dale. This family has supported you your entire life. Now it's your turn to step up. Find the money somewhere or—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavily in the air. The call ended abruptly when Jessica stood up and slammed her laptop closed, cutting the connection without a goodbye. I sat alone in my apartment, shaking, unsure if what had just transpired was real or some stress-induced nightmare. In the days that followed, I reached out repeatedly. Texts, calls, emails. The responses were sparse and cold when they came at all. Dad sent a single message: "Disappointed in your priorities." Mom called once, tearfully suggesting I take out a personal loan to continue supporting them. Jessica simply blocked me on all social media platforms. As weeks passed, my attempts at communication grew less frequent, but didn't stop entirely. I sent birthday cards, holiday greetings, brief updates about my life. The silence from Mapleton was increasingly deafening. Occasionally, I would see social media updates through mutual connections. Jessica at a music festival, Mom showing off renovations to the kitchen, Dad posing with a set of new golf clubs. They were clearly carrying on with their lives partially funded by years of my financial support, while I had been effectively excommunicated for daring to establish a boundary. The realization was as painful as it was enlightening. 2 months after our confrontation, I decided to make one last attempt at reconciliation. Christmas was approaching, and despite everything, I couldn't imagine spending the holiday without at least trying to reconnect with my family. I booked a flight to Mapleton, not telling them I was coming. Perhaps a face-to-face conversation would break through the wall of silence. The flight home was a turbulent mix of hope, anxiety, and dread. I rented a car at the regional airport and drove the familiar roads to our neighborhood, noting the holiday decorations adorning homes and businesses. Our house stood out with particularly elaborate lights, new additions since my last visit, synchronized to music and drawing small crowds of onlookers. I parked across the street, gathering courage before approaching the front door. Through the large picture window, I could see a gathering in progress. A dozen or more people filled our living room, drinks in hand, laughing and talking. I recognized neighbors, family, friends, a few of Dad's co-workers. Taking a deep breath, I walked up the driveway and rang the doorbell. Mom answered, her festive sweater and carefully styled hair suggesting this was no impromptu get-together. Her smile froze when she saw me, eyes widening in unmistakable dismay rather than joy. "Dale," she said flatly. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you for Christmas," I replied, forcing a smile. "Surprise." She hesitated before reluctantly stepping aside to let me enter. The buzzing conversation in the living room dimmed as people noticed my arrival. Dad stood by the fireplace, tumbler of scotch in hand, an expensive brand I had sent last year as a gift. Jessica sat on the sofa beside a well-dressed man. I didn't recognize her hand possessively on his arm. "Look who decided to show up," Dad announced to the room, his tone making it clear this was not a celebrated development. The next hour was excruciating. I was introduced to guests with minimal enthusiasm. Conversations excluded me or centered on local events I knew nothing about, and family members moved strategically around the room to avoid direct interaction. I felt like a ghost haunting my own home, visible but fundamentally separate from the world of the living. Finally, Dad cornered me in the kitchen as I refilled my water glass, having refused the offer of alcohol to keep my wits intact. "Why are you really here, Dale?" he demanded, voice low but sharp. "Need to feel better about abandoning your responsibilities." "I didn't abandon anything," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I hit a rough patch and needed a temporary break." "I'm still your son." "A son who knows his duties," he countered. "A son who understands what family means." Our conversation escalated, drawing Mom and eventually Jessica into the kitchen. Away from the guests, they dropped all pretense of civility. "Do you know how embarrassing it was to explain to everyone why you stopped helping?" Mom hissed. "After all we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me recently?" I asked, the words escaping before I could temper them. "Other than ignore me until you needed something." Jessica laughed bitterly. "Oh, please. Don't act like the victim. You got away from this town, this life. The least you could do is share the wealth." "It was never about sharing," I realized aloud. "It was about taking. You never saw me as family, just as a source of income." The conversation reached its devastating climax when Dad, red-faced and trembling with anger, pointed toward the door and spoke the words that would ultimately sever our relationship. "We don't need you anymore," he declared coldly. "If you're not going to contribute financially, you have no value to this family. Jessica's new boyfriend is an investment banker. He's helping us manage the money you sent all these years. Turns out your father has quite the talent for stock picking, so you can go back to California. We're doing fine without your handouts." Mom didn't contradict him. Jessica smirked triumphantly. The truth crashed over me like a wave of ice water. The years of manipulation, the conditional nature of their love, the fundamental transactional basis of what I had believed was familial bond. In that moment of terrible clarity, I straightened my shoulders and made the decision that would ultimately save my life and restore my dignity. Without another word, I walked upstairs to my old bedroom, now converted into a home office with expensive furniture, collected the few childhood mementos I still cared about, and returned to the kitchen. "Family isn't supposed to come with a price tag," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. "I deserve to be loved for who I am, not what I can provide. Goodbye." I walked out of that house with nothing but a small box of memories and the crushing weight of reality, but also paradoxically with the first steps toward genuine freedom. The drive back to the airport that night was a blur, tears obscuring the road ahead as I navigated through the darkness. I changed my flight, paying an exorbitant fee to return to California immediately rather than staying the planned week in Mapleton. By dawn, I was back in my apartment, emotionally gutted, but somehow still standing. The following weeks were among the darkest of my life. I moved through my days mechanically functioning at work, but little else. Sleep eluded me. Food lost its taste. The betrayal consumed my thoughts, replaying in endless loops of remembered conversations and belated realizations. Sophia, bless her patient heart, encouraged me to seek professional help. "This is grief, Dale," she explained gently. "You're mourning the family you thought you had. That requires healing, just like any profound loss." With her support, I found a therapist specializing in family trauma and financial abuse, terms I would never have applied to my situation before, but which fit with devastating accuracy. Dr. A2. Martin created a safe space where I could unravel the complex web of manipulation that had defined my relationship with my family for years. "What you've experienced is a form of exploitation," she explained during one particularly illuminating session. Your family conditioned you to derive your sense of worth from financial provision rather than mutual respect and affection. Breaking free from that dynamic is both necessary and incredibly painful. Alongside therapy, I discovered a support group for adult children of emotionally manipulative parents. Hearing others share stories with patterns eerily similar to my own helped diminish the isolation and shame. These strangers understood what even my closest friends couldn't fully grasp: the unique anguish of being treated as a resource rather than a person by those who should love you unconditionally. Aaron proved himself a true friend during this period, dragging me out for hikes when I would have preferred to wallow in solitude, listening without judgment when I needed to vent, and sharing wisdom from his own healthy family dynamics as a counterpoint to my experiences. "Real family lifts you up," he told me one evening as we watched the sunset from a hilltop overlooking the bay. "They don't drain you dry and discard you when you're empty." Gradually, I began rebuilding my life around this new reality. I created a financial recovery plan, starting with small emergency savings and working toward stability. The promotion I had been working toward at TechFront came through, easing some of the immediate financial pressure. I enrolled in advanced coding certification courses, investing in my career rather than in people who saw me as merely a means to their comfort. Perhaps most importantly, I established clear boundaries in all my relationships. I learned to say no without accompanying guilt. I recognized the warning signs of emotional manipulation. I stopped measuring my worth by what I could provide materially to others. My involvement with a community mentorship program became a healing cornerstone. Volunteering as a coding instructor for underserved high school students gave me perspective and purpose. These teenagers, eager to learn despite significant obstacles, reminded me of my younger self, passionate about technology and determined to build a better future. Their genuine appreciation for my knowledge and time, with no expectations beyond the classroom, restored my faith in human connection. 3 months after the Christmas confrontation, the first contact from my family arrived. A text message from Mom expressing concern about my extended silence and asking if everything was okay with the money situation. The lack of awareness was staggering. I drafted and deleted a dozen responses before settling on a simple neutral reply. "I'm doing well, focusing on my health and career. Hope you're all well too." Her response came quickly. "That's nice, honey. Dad and I were talking about the roof that needs replacing this spring, probably around $7,000. When do you think you might be able to help with that?" No questions about my life. No acknowledgement of our last interaction. No recognition of my boundaries. Just the expectation that the ATM was back in service. For the first time I felt not anger but pity. The emotional poverty of viewing relationships solely through the lens of material gain seemed suddenly tragic rather than infuriating. I responded with more compassion than they had shown me. "I won't be sending money anymore, but I'm happy to talk about job search resources or budgeting strategies if that would help." She never replied. Over the following months, similar attempts at financial reconciliation came from both Dad and Jessica. Each time I maintained the same boundary, offering emotional support or practical advice but no financial assistance. Each time the conversation ended abruptly when it became clear no money would be forthcoming. Meanwhile, my own life flourished in unexpected ways. Sophia and I moved in together, creating a home filled with warmth and genuine affection. My career advanced as I specialized in cybersecurity frameworks, an in-demand field with excellent compensation. The anxiety that had plagued me began to recede as financial stability returned, this time built on a foundation of self-care rather than self-sacrifice. I formed deep, authentic friendships with people who valued me for my character, humor, and loyalty, not for my earning potential or generosity. My chosen family expanded to include Aaron and his wife, colleagues who became friends, neighbors who checked in during difficult times, and the kids from my mentorship program who sometimes stopped by just to share their latest coding projects. A full year after that fateful Christmas, I received word through a former high school classmate that my family had fallen on genuinely hard times. Dad's investment schemes had collapsed, taking their savings with them. The house was in foreclosure. Jessica's boyfriend had moved on to greener pastures once the money dried up. Despite everything, I agreed to meet with them when they reached out, setting clear conditions and meeting in a neutral location, a coffee shop in the next town over from Mapleton. I arrived early center myself with breathing exercises Dr. Martin had taught me and watched them enter, noticeably less polished than the last time I had seen them. The conversation began awkwardly with surface-level updates and careful avoidance of the elephant in the room. Finally, Mom broke the tension. "We've been too proud to admit it, but we made terrible mistakes, Dale," she said, eyes downcast. "Not just with money, but with how we treated you." Dad cleared his throat. "We got used to the lifestyle your help provided. Started feeling entitled to it. Then, when it stopped, we showed our worst selves," Jessica finished, "and lost the best person in our family." Their apologies seemed genuine, if somewhat motivated by their current circumstances. I neither rejected nor fully embraced their overture, maintaining the emotional distance that protected my hard-won peace. "I appreciate you saying that," I responded carefully. "What exactly are you hoping for from our relationship going forward?" The uncomfortable silence that followed told me everything. Dad finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Well, we were hoping you might be able to help us get back on our feet. Just a loan to stop the foreclosure. And maybe a little extra, too." I held up my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "I won't be providing financial support," I said firmly, "but I can offer other kinds of help. Dad, I know a manufacturing firm in Indianapolis hiring people with your experience. Mom, your accounting skills are still valuable. I can connect you with remote work opportunities. Jessica, I know it's not glamorous, but my friend's marketing agency needs administrative support while you build your portfolio." Their disappointment was visible but not unexpected. What surprised me was that instead of walking out or lashing out, they listened. For the first time in our relationship, we discussed possibilities that didn't involve me writing checks. By the end of our 2-hour conversation, tentative plans had formed, practical steps towards self-sufficiency rather than dependence. As we prepared to leave, Dad asked the question that had clearly been on his mind. "Are we still family, Dale?" I considered his question carefully before answering. "We're related by blood, and that won't change. Building a healthy family relationship takes time, consistency, and mutual respect. I'm willing to try if you are, but with new boundaries and expectations." That coffee shop meeting marked the beginning of a different kind of relationship. Not the instant restoration of traditional family bonds, but the slow, careful construction of something potentially more authentic. Weekly phone calls focused on genuine connection rather than financial matters. Small celebrations of actual achievements rather than materialistic acquisitions. Gradual rebuilding of trust through actions rather than obligations. Whether this new foundation will ultimately support a lasting relationship remains uncertain. What is certain is that I no longer derive my sense of worth from their approval or measure my success by their expectations. I've discovered that family, true family, is defined not by DNA, but by consistent love, respect, and support, without conditions or price tags. Sometimes the people who share our blood are not capable of being the family we need. In those cases, we must build our families of choice, surrounding ourselves with those who value us for our essential humanity rather than our utility. It took losing my biological family to find my authentic one. The greatest victory wasn't walking away from their exploitation. It was walking toward my own worth, dignity, and peace. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family challenges. Remember, your value is never determined by what you provide, only by who you are. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your worth in every relationship.